Welcome to the 5th episode of VSTML 2025 Recaps from Reality TV Warriors. My name is Michael Harmstone, and joining me as always is the Canadian who we would definitely give most a 5 out of 10, Logan Saunders.
Good afternoon.
And the guy who has assured us that all the best heads take 2 days, David Bindley.
Good morning.
Good morning. Have we had good weeks?
We've had hot weeks.
Tariffs. That's all I've heard about for the past 5 days.
As we discussed before we started recording, you can only do political content if you do it in an Obama impression. Your move, Saunders.
I can't do it. No. I cannot. I've never ever... I don't even know where to begin with an Obama impression.
Vaguely offensive impressions are your brand, Saunders. Just lean into it at this point.
I could, maybe one day we'll do an Obama fashion show on this podcast.
You do realize this is still very much an audio-only medium, right?
Yeah, we'll find a way.
So when we last recorded, obviously the dog's son was at my parents', and Van was a little bit scared of him. The dog's son continued to be very good. I saw him every day that he was here last week. His parents did forget what day they were meant to be picking you up, though, and did have to get a text off Mum going, "What time are you actually picking him up today? Because, you know, we do have other plans." So he went home on Wednesday, and then I also saw Van on Wednesday, and he was being a little pain in the arse and biting everything. But me and my brother took him to the park on Saturday, and he was very well behaved. He's now doing down without any treats being required, which is a huge improvement from where he was last week. I was also thinking of you guys when I was on a work call this afternoon, because I don't think we've ever really discussed what I do for a job, but I work in the education sector, shall we say. Not in a Saunders way, but I work in the education sector. And I was on a call about training us basically to do a new assessment platform. But someone was talking about an unused feature on this assessment platform where students can not only answer the question, but they can also use a slider to tell you how confident they are in their answer. And I'm just on mute, laughing my head off, going, I need to tell the guys this is on the podcast today. This is so much fun.
What was the scale? Was it 1 to 100%?
I think it was 1 to 100. So genuinely, we actually, after a year and a half, 2 years, may have got to the bottom of where the hell that stupid mole joke came from. Of someone going, oh yeah, they need to pick their mole and say how confident they are. Maybe it's someone who also works in the education sector that came up with that dumbass idea.
They just apply it to everything in their everyday life. What do you want for dinner? Oh, I really want pizza. How confident are you that you want pizza on a scale of 1 to 100?
On a scale of 1 to 100, how much do you want pizza?
On a scale of 1 to 100, how much do you want pineapple on your pizza?
0. And my two kind of anecdotes for this week both centre around communication, I'd say, because yesterday, we're recording this on Monday as always, yesterday was obviously the 2nd of February, and I turned my phone on in the morning, and I had an email off the suspect list email wishing me a happy Groundhog Day. Because some unnamed comedian has decided to send me a happy Groundhog Day email, and I'm not going to point out who it was. I know exactly who was responsible for this, but we had a few words yesterday of, yes, this was funny, but don't do it again.
Did you get subscribed to a bunch of groundhog-related websites?
I did not, thankfully, no. Let's see if we can find it now, actually, because I've got my phone in front of me. Where was it?
While we wait, happy Groundhog Day to Daniel Peake.
Yeah, that is the next part of this. I did wish, as a result of this email, I did wish Dan a happy Groundhog Day, because you know how needy he gets about these things.
Yeah.
Hello, Michael. Happy Groundhog Day from Guess Who, is what it said. So thank you to Guess Who. They know who they are.
The Canadian band.
Are you going to get 6 weeks of winter, and how confident are you?
From a scale of 0 to 100.
Can you imagine that person just going into a medical office? How infected how confident are you that this looks infected on a scale from 0 to 100?
How many years do I have to live from 0 to 100?
How many people do I need to face in this trivia competition with Bob Saget on a scale from 0 to 100?
And the other bit of communication-themed anecdotery that we have is that someone got a compliment from a mole alum this week, didn't they? And
What?
yes, someone hasn't been told about this yet deliberately. So I was cooking or preparing my my dinner on Friday, and I got a DM on the podcast account
Yeah.
on Instagram, replying to our previous day's story of our suspicions, saying "Bindles for the win,"
Okay.
and that was from our good
Rob
friend
Decay?
and secret listener Rob Decay. Is correct.
Oh. Hi, Rob.
Yes. Hello, Rob. I don't think we really talk that much about how much Rob does listen, but I think he does listen to most of the podcast. So, hello, Rob.
Yeah.
And I did reply to him that I won't tell him that you said that.
You lied. You lied to Rob.
Well, I'll try not to badmouth that season too much this week.
Yeah, I lied because it's good content.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking of DMing him a couple weeks ago, but I didn't get around to it.
And the final bit of podcasty preamble is, of course, Fuzzy's terrible Peter Yankers sample did come back to bite her, as accidentally the 2 corners that she needed to complete a diagonal were not completed.
Oh, that's a shame.
Too bad, so sad.
Yeah.
Poor Fuzzy.
She's back to normal this week of not getting the runtime or the banner correctly, and inevitably stumbling ass backwards into a bingo anyway, probably.
Has she had a suspect list that has been more accurate than mine this season?
I mean, it wouldn't be hard.
I cannot confirm nor deny whether Fuzzy is now winning First Suspicions, but, there is a solo winner on First Suspicions at the moment. I will tease that for the end of the episode.
Is it Daniel Peake?
It is not, and I will also spoil that it is not Michelle Pierce-Donovan.
But happy Groundhog Day to Daniel Peake anyway.
Yeah. Spoilers for the end of the episode. Michelle is currently losing First Suspicions. She is a solo loser at the moment.
Oh, it's not me.
Somehow.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, as soon as the execution happened this episode, I was thinking, well, again? Again?
See, I know who your top suspect is for this week, and I'm torn because, on the one hand, obviously, if my team stay intact after next week, I have a guaranteed finalist. On the other hand, if your top suspect goes again next week, that's 4 or 5 weeks on us. And this is becoming hilarious. I was saying to Bindles before we started recording, we've done 11 suspicions in the first 4 weeks of this podcast, and 5 of yours have gone home already.
Hey, at least I didn't suspect someone who we already knew lost the season.
Yeah.
I may as well just suspect Linda from Traders UK at this point. That's what it feels like.
On First Suspicions, you are actually 9 points ahead of Michelle at the moment.
That sounds like a lot.
It is a lot, because theoretical maximum is 45, I think it is now.
So 20% better than Michelle.
So yeah, we'll get to First Suspicions at the end of the episode anyway. Just know that Michelle somehow is doing worse than you are, even though your suspicions have been disgustingly bad this season already. So previously, the group split as Ray and Sophie were allowed to interrogate Sam, Micah, and Rose, while the other 3 went searching through a haunted house for cash. In an attempt to give back to the people of Tonle Sap, most of them handed out shaved ice, but Sophie's skills at Snakes and Ladders saw her bank €330 for the pot and a yogurt for herself. When paired up to finish a party scene, half of them couldn't complete it and delayed their start to the test, but in the end it was Ray who couldn't be present anymore, as he was the 3rd person and 3rd man sent home this season.
It's almost like it's Groundhog Day or something with how it keeps happening.
Yeah, it's really weird that, isn't it? The men keep going, Logan's first suspicions keep going.
And happy Groundhog Day to Daniel Peake, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how we've not said it before, but
yeah, I hope he has a lot of fun events planned to commemorate the holiday. Hopefully, he should celebrate it like Chinese New Year.
And I hope that he shares them with us.
Yeah. Take lots of pictures, Daniel.
I think that joke passed Saunders by. So it's time for another briefing of the mole. Rick says,
Always keep your calm. Focus on the bigger picture. Don't let it discourage you when things go differently.
Yeah, I have to go with the flow. Be adaptive, I think. Also, Happy Groundhog Day, Daniel Peake.
Was it just me, or did this one seem particularly like Rick was narrating like a self-help affirmation video?
Focus on the bigger goal. Take a deep breath. Do not stress out.
Please don't make me do the stereotypical Dutch voice doing, "You're a smart, independent woman who don't need no man. You can quit smoking." So the episode title is The Right to Concentration, which makes 4 of 5 episodes starting with the right.
Mm-hmm.
And as we said last week, there's definitely something in that. We just don't know what it is yet.
Yet all my suspicions always start with the wrong at the beginning of each episode.
I didn't want to point it out, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we begin on day 9 in Siem Reap, and they are greeted by 7 moped riders. Some of them have got a book and a pencil in the basket, and Micah says she doesn't want to grab one with a book straight away. And they get to a roundabout and then are split up, with only the 4 of them with a book and a pencil going to temples, and the others just disappear. The 4 with a book, which is Sophie, Sam, Stein, and Rose, are driven to Angkor, and Rick tells us that from a city that was formerly over 1 million people, only the temples remain. They will also be learning moves from the Apsara dance, which is a traditional dance used to tell stories. And is, thanks to me Googling it to make sure I was spelling it correctly when doing the suspect list question yesterday, it's part of the repertoire of the National Ballet of Cambodia, is where the Apsara comes from. So it's actually technically ballet they were learning.
Oh.
I went to Angkor. Did you know that, Michael?
I think you may have mentioned it once or twice. It was really subtle. There was just an implication, but...
You went to Angkor? What?
Yeah, I went. I spent a whole day. I refuse to believe that the contestants weren't sweating as much as it looked on in the episode. Because all I remember is showing up there fairly early in the morning and just sweating immediately. And just, I felt like I lost 5 to 10 pounds just in sweat from walking around Angkor for a day.
Were they correct that you're only able to get around via moped?
Yeah, I had to hire a driver for the day because almost all the temples are fairly spread out. In fact, you can do 2 different Angkor tours. One is a 1-day tour where you see like Bayon Temple, the Patram Temple, Angkor Wat itself, and the other temples that tribes were named after in Survivor Cambodia.
There's only one that you haven't mentioned at this point.
Yeah. Which one? Oh, Takeo Temple. Takeo Temple was brutal because it's there are so many steps up that temple and it's so steep, or there's a big gap between each step going up that I had to crawl on all 4s just to get up the Takeo Temple. And then you can also do a 2-day tour in Angkor where you check out a bunch of others. And I think one of those ones was used in this episode. But it's just a mass, as they said on the episode a couple times. It really is a massive area. You don't just walk around like an old town area in a European city. Like, you need to have that driver to take you around. Like, you're riding for 5 to 10 minutes at a time to get between some of the temples.
I must say, Bindles, I'm very proud of us, because neither of us made any jokes about Saunders crawling somewhere on all 4s.
Yeah, I was thinking, that's why I stumbled and paused there, because I was thinking, I don't hear any giggling whatsoever from either of you.
Yeah.
Oh, there was giggling. Just, it was off mic.
I mean, usually when he crawls around, he sees his own shadow, and we've got 6 more weeks of his stupid suspicions.
Yeah, good point.
6 more weeks of Nadia.
Yeah. And a happy Groundhog Day to Daniel Peake.
Yeah, happy I don't say happy birthday. Happy Groundhog Day, buddy. I think this is the only means I ever mentioned Daniel Peake's name is for Groundhog Day. I don't think I've ever had an actual conversation with him.
I spent the entire day with him a couple of years ago. It was on the premiere day of the one recent series of Survivor UK.
And nobody was on all 4s?
Nobody was on all 4s, but we did go to a cat cafe. So there were creatures on all 4s.
Yeah.
So the 4 with the book find 3 envelopes waiting for them. Easy worth €100, medium worth 250, and hard worth 500. And they choose hard and are shown 3 dance movements. Once they've seen and noted down the movements, they open the envelope to be told that Bayon Temple is known as the Temple of Many Faces. In 54 towers, sculpted faces can be found, but they have 4 minutes to find out exactly how many sculpted faces there are in total. If they write down the correct answer, they will earn €500. And they settle on not counting, but just doing the maths, knowing that there are 4 per tower.
Do you think it was like the same challenge, whichever envelope they chose?
I don't think so. I think certainly the Tomb Raider photo was probably harder depending on which one they picked.
Okay.
Or maybe it was something like the photo was the same, but the requirements were different. So it was like there's no tourists, and it was one of the rules for the one they did pick.
Oh, I could see that would make sense.
Because that is also a tribute to another challenge, a rather infamous challenge in a previous season that you've not seen, Saunders.
And the Bion Temple, when I was there, it was by far the second busiest temple after Angkor Wat. So I think that's why they went there first before the crowd started to show up. Because the Patram Temple, the tourists were part of the task, right? Like part of the difficulty of the task. Because that's the other highly visited one. It's Patram.
Taprom it was.
I always scratch that or reverse it. So the Tomb Raider Temple, Bion Temple, and Angkor Wat, those are the 3 busiest in Angkor. So I'm not surprised that they did Bion Temple first before the tourists showed up.
Yeah, my suspicion is that maybe the Tomb Raider photo was the same regardless of what they did, but there was additional requirements like you can't get any tourists in the shot that made it the hard version. This is also, as you may have guessed, a suspect list question this week, which is which team was the mole in? Were they doing the temple visits or were they learning Apsara?
That seems particularly evil considering who was in which group this week.
Yeah, I know it did. It was deliberate. I got complaints last season of the suspect list bonus questions being a bit too easy, so I'm making them maybe slightly trickier. It's like how everyone uses a Yoker on the first or the last week, so those 2 are going to be the fun ones. I know what the final week one's going to be because I've been waiting to use that question. But yeah, I thought I'd make people put the money where their mouth is a little bit more for some of them.
Sam catches on to what the second half of this challenge is going to be right at the very beginning.
Yeah. He displays a level of genre savvy, knowing that these challenges are going to be intertwined in some capacity.
Yeah. Like, I also don't think it was that hard to realise, the challenges we're doing don't really involve the dancing, so the dancing's got to be with the other group somehow.
And yet they were still, Sam was the only one who picked up on that, really. It was odd that they were all doubting him, like, oh no, that's not going to be the challenge. Unless that was just a mulling behavior to try and do a lame attempt at sabotage. Just create a little bit of doubt. Maybe you don't have to be as diligent with note-taking as you were originally going to be.
It's an interesting challenge production-wise as well, because if you are the mole, in theory, you probably want to be on the temple touring side, because that's where most of the money is. But, in practice, the sneakiest sabotage is probably on the Apsara side, I would say. And you can directly cost them $2,000 straight away on the Apsara side if you're clever.
It didn't occur to me now why Nora likely didn't do the dance performance, because I was thinking, why is she being excluded from the challenge? Was she sick or something? But I'm going to guess it was probably due to religious reasons.
Is it a religious thing, though? I would have thought if it was a religious thing, she wouldn't have started the challenge at all.
I think it was just that it's a lot more physical than it looks. And she was just finding it difficult and didn't want to be the reason that they didn't win the money. Because from what we've seen of Nora so far in the season, she's very logical and competent.
Yeah.
And I think it probably weighed on her a little bit heavily that she came across a task that she absolutely couldn't physically do and couldn't physically complete perfectly, so she didn't want to let the team down. So the best way to do it would be to just step back and say, you 2 are better at this than I am, you've got more of a chance.
But that wasn't that's not said to us as a requirement that only 2 out of the 3 people would perform the dances.
Yeah, but they wouldn't.
Yeah.
All 3 of them would have if she'd stayed in, presumably. I presume that they were told as soon as they started the Apsara dance exactly what their component would have been, which is you are going to learn the poses that the other team were taught. They have been in control of how many you've actually got to learn. You need to perform these absolutely perfectly to be able to completely get $2,000. I presume that they were told that straight away.
Yeah, it's just weird that wasn't spelled out in the episode, because I was thinking, so everyone fully participates in their role except for one person.
Yeah.
It just jumped out at me a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the maybe religious element of it could be the fact that apparently traditionally it's played by women sewn into tight-fitting traditional dress. So maybe that was what she didn't feel comfortable doing. I don't know.
Because Rick doesn't even address, like, oh, Nora's not doing this. It was just, oh,
Yeah.
there's Bridget and Mike on stage, and it's just weird that it wasn't addressed at all. It wasn't, oh, for optimal strategy, Nora said out of the performance part of the challenge. It was just, oh, there's just Bridget and Mike on stage without any explanation at all.
Yeah, I feel like whatever the reason was, sort of like production understood what the reason was. It wasn't like whoever it was in Survivor China basically refusing to go and do the Buddhist ritual thing.
Leslie?
Yeah. Like, I feel like it wasn't that kind of situation. I think it was a bit more like Babs last year not wanting to wear the dress in the Mexican dance challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What it reminded me of was on The Apprentice last year, there was a woman in a hijab, and her team had decided to do some sort of booze themed event, I think it
Yeah.
was, and she didn't feel comfortable, so she just asked the producers if she could swap teams. So she did.
Okay.
So that's what it reminded me of, was Nora just going, I don't feel comfortable doing this, can I just sit out? Yep, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, in the Apprentice situation, was there any attention drawn to it, or no?
Not really, no. It was her saying, I don't feel comfortable flogging booze. I'm going to ask if I can swap to the other team. They were all very understanding. The other team accepted it pretty quickly, and then Lord Sugar pointed it out at the start of the boardroom and just said, I see you swap teams. And that was it. Just allowed her to basically say, yeah, I didn't feel comfortable selling booze.
With Babs last season, was that explicitly stated in the episode too?
Yeah, she just said, I chose to wear the masculine costume. That was literally all she said, I think.
Yeah, but so that's what I mean. Just here, it's odd that nothing was acknowledged. I should say, it was certainly implied that there was a reason, but we're just not. Yeah, there was no explicit like this is what happened, and then move on. It could have been like a quick 2 or 3 second explanation.
Maybe it was just something that Nora didn't really feel comfortable vocalizing, and they thought there's no good way for us to bring this to attention on the air, so we'll just have her say, yeah, I'm not good at this, I'm noping out, and then she just reappears after the challenge.
Yeah, like I feel like if it was, just a choice sort of thing, they would have maybe pushed a little bit harder, basically being like, you're on the show, this is the challenge, you're going to do the thing.
Yeah.
But I think maybe production sort of realised they probably couldn't win that argument, so...
Yeah, and why create unnecessary drama by drawing attention to it, right? If it's not really an important detail, or if she and not wanting to embarrass her too as well, or not wanting to make it a talking point of the episode, which now we are talking about, so I guess it is a talking point for us. But just interesting little thing to pick up on.
Yeah, I think it's funny that we spent more time talking about Nora with regards to this than we have the last 4 episodes.
And that was my other note too. I was thinking if she went home this episode, there could be like conspiracy theories out there that this challenge, the performance part of it, happened in the following episode, but they aired it this week.
Yeah, you have to remember that this version is not netmol. They don't go out to humiliate people and make them look like money-grabbing arseholes on television. The new showrunner has definitely taken inspiration from Belkier that this is a fun trip that we're all going to have fun on, and no one's really going to be a proper villain. Certainly not in the American TV sense.
I know we don't want them to humiliate these people, but I wouldn't mind seeing Sam as a horse's ass.
I know we don't want them to humiliate people, but, Tico was right there.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you guys, but I really liked this whole challenge. This I thought this was a fun cultural challenge.
I think that's the thing with this week. Like, these challenges were fun. I don't know if they were great mole challenges. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but I think the mask challenge later on, I think that was sort of a little bit too, not quite slow, but a little bit too individual.
I mean, we'll get to this with the mask challenge, but that is the longest challenge they have done in ages.
Yeah.
It was a 2-hour time limit.
And one thing that jumped out at me about the mask challenge too, it's like something you would see in the first or second season when when there was more of a documentary motif, especially in the first season of Vidum, where you forget that there's even a mole in play. And for those 2 hours when they're just making those Buddha heads, and that's what it felt like. It didn't even feel like that there was even a mole at play there. It was just them having fun in Cambodia for 2 hours, and then realize, oh wait, right, we're on Vidum.
The other thing about this episode is it's a very generous monetary episode. The maximum of this episode's like 7-8 grand, which is very high for Vidum.
Yeah.
I think it shows you just how affordable it is to film in Cambodia. That it definitely, I think filming in Cambodia is the reason why the potential for this pod is so much higher than a lot of recent seasons.
I think Oman was fairly generous with the money as well. I suspect Oman was less of a cheap country to film in than Cambodia.
There wouldn't have been any appearance fees though, because
No,
none
true.
of them were quote unquote celebrities.
So, yeah, they settle on just counting 4 times the tower, which I suspect was maybe a mole action if the mole was on that side. There were definitely more faces than that. I'm pretty sure they failed that challenge.
Yeah, I was about to say, I could when I was there, I could have sworn some of the towers only had 3 faces on them.
Yeah. I think there was a trick to that challenge. I don't know what it is, obviously, because I've never been there, but
Yeah.
certainly rushing it through and going, yeah, let's just say there's 4 in each tower and multiply multiply 54 by 4 and just bank that. Like, that's an obvious mole sabotage if the mole was on that side.
Yeah.
I like how the only other strategic attempt to count the faces was Sam trying to count them one at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then just immediately scolded.
You know who would have known the answer to that question? Toon with his Lonely Planet guide. I bet it was in there.
I'm curious if it's actually if I'm gonna look how many faces there are right now. I can't. Let's see how many faces on
To
on
Google.
Temple. To Google. Oh, 216.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
very surprised they passed that one then.
Yeah, that was not a mole action. That was correct.
Thinking about it, they had to pass that one because that was the other €500 one, and they visibly failed the other €500 one, which was the yoga.
Yeah, I just scrolled through just to make sure it wasn't a stupid AI error. The first 4 links that pop up all say 216.
Oh.
Take it to the foot of our stairs. I apologise to anyone who I suspected of sabotaging that challenge.
Yeah, they did that correctly. The most rushed, least thought out strategy worked out for them. So good on them. I'm glad I Googled that.
So they then head to the next temple, which I don't even think we find out which temple it was, and they find a phone waiting for them there. They also have the same monetary choice, which is 100, 250 or €500, and the associated number of dance moves. This time they choose 2, and for their €250, they must find a particular Apsara structure within Tominon's temple, so we do find out which one it was, and take a picture of it within 4 minutes. And Rose decides to just walk off and play tourist, despite the fact that all these sculptures are outside.
There's one little fun bit of foreshadowing in this section that I've only just picked up, sort of looking at my notes. Sophie says at the start of this, when they're trying to decide which one to do, she's like, I think I'd rather have average. And then in the mask challenge, she's the one who gets closest to what the average ends up being.
Ah.
Yeah.
Maybe she's the mole. Maybe that was a hint.
Which arm was broken on the statue? Was it the right arm broken?
It was left, I think.
Oh, then never mind.
I think it was left hand grabbing right arm and the left arm was the broken one, I think. You guys have seen this episode a lot more recently than I have.
Well, there goes my theory.
Why, what was your theory?
Well, just if the right arm was broken and the episode titles have all had the word right in them.
Yeah.
Unless the right arm being attacked is a hint.
I mean, you should be used to your theories going to shit by now.
Yeah.
So the third temple is all about balance, and they choose the hard envelope. They have to hold the position on the statue in front of them for 3 minutes, and if all of them succeed, they will earn €500. And Sam takes the opportunity to constantly chatter and distract Sophie, and she, despite having the most yoga experience, is the one to drop with about 45 seconds to go.
That struck me as surprisingly hard.
Yeah, I'm assuming that envelope would have been 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, depending on which one they picked.
Yeah, that... I was just thinking, when you have to hold a specific pose, even 1 minute feels like a really long time.
Yeah, how would you do with holding a specific position, Saunders?
Well, I'm going to assume that there is a lot of innuendo involved with that question, and not very long.
You just have a dirty mind. I'm asking this purely
No,
innocently.
We would never
Not
make
a
innuendo on this
chance.
podcast.
How would you have done with holding this position that we saw on the screen, you absolute pervert? I'm asking you because you're the one who obviously is used to holding positions.
Yeah. I would have not done well. I have terrible balance. I have terrible balance and not flexible.
Yeah, the position you currently hold is worst guesser on the podcast.
Jeez. And can I just say that Sophie being the one who messed up, just the way she messed up too, seemed very, very suspicious to me. Which is why she'll be executed next week. But
yeah,
I feel like blaming it on Sam's talking was a really lame excuse.
Well, to be fair, Sam is a bossy boy.
The thing I will say about Sophie, and she isn't in my top 2, spoilers this week, is if it is her, it's a very public sabotage. And this is more for the Apsara side, but the mess-ups that you do in public don't tend to be the ones that the mole will do. And certainly they don't tend to be the ones that get drawn attention to if the mole is doing a sabotage like that. I know it's probably unavoidable in the yoga challenge, but if you are Sophie as mole in that, you don't hype up your yoga experience, I would say, if you know that you're going to drop with 45 seconds to go or whatever.
Unless she was trying to redirect it onto Sam, or that she is so confident that she can get away with this sabotage at this point. Because there are a lot of moles that when they go undetected through 3 or 4 rounds, they start to leave breadcrumbs a lot more in the second half of the season, thinking no one is onto me at all. Look at this. I can say I practice yoga and I'm going to screw up a yoga pose.
I think it's interesting along those lines that last week everyone was very quick to nominate Micah for the lie detector.
Yeah.
But I think this week was the first week anyone suspected her during the test sequence.
Yeah. I did think that was interesting because it was Micah and Rose very quickly last week.
Yeah.
Who obviously have been certainly my top suspects for the past few weeks.
Hmm.
And I think you've had Micah and Sam the past few weeks, haven't you, Bindles? But
yeah,
certainly Micah and Rose have been, I would say, collectively our 2 top suspects. So it was very interesting to see both of them get interrogated. But also, as a mole, I think you get a lot more bragging points if you are the mole. You make yourself, quote unquote, super suspicious to get yourself into that lie detector, and then you beat it and give them absolutely no important information.
Yeah.
But then again, you're not controlling any of the money flow.
I like how the yoga pose reminded me so much of the Zoidberg dance of peace from Futurama. It made me laugh so hard.
We've not got to the banner for this week yet, but Bindles knows what it is already. That really, really tickled me, the banner that we're going to use this week. I don't think you'll guess it's Saunders because it was a blink and you'll miss it, but it really tickled me. And it's not Sam this week. I'll tease that.
Was it Sophie?
It is Sophie, yes.
I think it's that one random facial expression that she makes that made me laugh out loud during the episode.
It is indeed a Sophie facial expression during the mass challenge, right before she chips off the nostril. There's just like half a second of her looking super unflattering on camera, and it made me laugh in exactly the same way that Anna sleeping on the plane did last year. Because there is no reason for them to include this in the episode other than to make me laugh. And I am absolutely here for them doing this sort of stupid shit that earns them banners. It's as simple as that. It just really tickled me, and I had to pause the episode and and stopped laughing before I could continue because it just really, really made me laugh how unflattering that picture was of Sophie. So the final temple has a medium envelope for them and the final two poses, and they must recreate a still photo from Tomb Raider, which was filmed at Tar Prom, where they are, within 4 minutes, and they are not allowed to have any tourists in the photo, and it will be judged on composition, posture, and attributes. And the time starts when they find the right location in, as Saunders calls it, Pra Tom.
I want to know how they failed this, because to me they
Did
looked
they?
well. I think the suggestion was that they only got one of the 500, one of the 250.
Yeah, they did.
I feel like they were closer to getting the other one, but I couldn't tell how they missed this one because the photo was pretty close to.
Yeah.
Certainly closer than some of the things they've approved in the past for challenges like this.
So Mole Talk on Saturday evening apparently theorised that they failed the Tomb Raider one and got the Apsara pose one correct. I think probably they passed the Tomb Raider one because that photo, I don't understand how you can reject it for composition or whatever. Sophie obviously doesn't look like Angelina Jolie, but she looked close enough to Lara Croft in that photo, I would say, for them to have approved it. It was in the right place. She was looking up in the right way. She had a backpack on. I think going back to Dominican Republic when we talked about that challenge in the finale with recreating photos, I think there was probably a checklist of things that they had to do, and I would be very surprised if they failed them, to be honest.
The only thing I can think of is maybe because they were in front of the temple, there was maybe a person in the shadows somewhere that got picked up, but I feel like we would have known that if that was the case.
Yeah, the other thing for it, I would say, is that we actually saw the photos side by side. I don't think we saw the photo they took for the Apsara one.
It was heavily implied they got it right.
Yeah, it was implied they got it right, but I think because we didn't see the Apsara one, maybe the mole was on that side and deliberately took a bad photo, or maybe the mole knew that there was a close one and tricked them, or something like that. I think it is more likely they got the Tomb Raider one right than the Apsara one, because we actually saw the evidence on the Tomb Raider one and we didn't on the other one.
Yeah.
That's my suspicion on it.
Yeah. This bit has maybe my favourite sassy line of this entire episode. Sophie's like, "Oh, I stood in the same place as Angelina Jolie," and then all of a sudden you just hear Stein, basically, I'm paraphrasing here, he's like, "Oh, shame you don't look like her." He's just such an asshole to everyone else, and it's hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, fast forwarding to the end of the episode, I think I'm hoping that Nora's going to go. Yeah. Just because then we have a pretty fun final five. Because say what you want about Rose, but she was a star in that lie detector test last week. She has the capacity to be a complete dickhead, which is exactly what we want. Obviously, Sam, the Jurian, doesn't fall too far from the tree. He needs to win this season. I cannot believe I'm rooting for someone on Michelle's team to win a season, but I am, because Sam needs to win. Micah, I think, maybe has the lowest entertainment value of that final five, but also she has her moments of just being a no-nonsense dickhead to people. I think Nora is maybe a little too politely competent for these people.
It's very rare for someone to be this under-edited this far into a season.
Yeah. And I also don't think that they would have the balls to make the visibly Muslim woman the mole. I think they have a lot of balls. I don't think they would have enough balls to do that. What were you going to say before I interrupt you, sir?
Who do you think they are, Jill?
Yeah, Jill would, absolutely. But I don't think Vidham would have the cojones right now. Certainly not in the first season of the new showrunner. Or the first proper season of the new showrunner.
5 weeks later. Oh, they do have the cojones.
I mean, it would be the worst way for you to win this season, I think, if Nora ends up being the mole. I could accept Steiner's mole more than Nora, I think. It would be deeply shameful for pretty much everyone involved in Suspect List and First Suspicions if Nora ends up being the mole.
Yeah. What did the mole do in the dance challenge?
Nothing.
Sat out.
Sat out. Yeah. That's a great mole.
A seat on the Rian bench.
I'd have a genuine dilemma of whether to credit people for saying that the mole learnt Apsara in that challenge if it's Nora. I mean, technically, yes, she did. But is it worth 3 bonus points? I'm not sure.
Technically, they all learnt Apsara in that challenge, Michael.
That's why I deliberately worded it the way I did. I said touring temples versus performing Apsara, I think, was the
Yeah.
phrase I used. I deliberately worded it because I knew as soon as I mentioned it on the podcast, there is a particular pedant, you, who would try and rip it apart.
Me?
Yes, you!
I would never be a pedant about anything except bingo.
I know exactly how you think, because I think the same way with these things. I would do exactly the same thing if the roles were reversed.
Hmm.
So the temple tourers are then taken to Angkor Village's Apsara Theatre, but not before the moped drivers mock the Dutch tourists for being so tall and heavy that they nearly flipped over. Again, no reason for this scene to be in the episode other than it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Or it's a clue.
Yeah.
So the dancers that they saw at the temples then perform a welcoming ceremony before being replaced by Rick. He tells them that they earned €750 of 2,000 at Angkor, but more could be added by the other team who will be performing Apsara for another €2,000. However, by choosing 2 middle and 2 hard assignments, they unintentionally decided that the others must perform 10 hand movements correctly to earn the €2,000. It is an all or nothing challenge. However, if they point out any errors, they can salvage €500 for the pot. This challenge, I think, was unnecessarily mean.
Yeah.
I know they don't want to give away €2,000, but I think it was a little bit harsh to make it all or nothing.
Yeah. Like, I get, you want easy challenges and hard challenge, but this seemed unnecessarily hard.
Yeah. I think maybe they should have said... I mean, obviously they didn't want the optics of being cheap and going, you can get €100 per correct one and we'll double it if you get all of them.
Yeah.
But maybe they should have gone down that route of having €150 per correct hand movement and then a €500 bonus if they get them all correct or something.
Yeah. Or like a weakest link type of chain where it starts off with a really small amount for one correct and then it like doubles after for each subsequent one.
Yeah. I think this is an outlier this season so far in that I think the money for this challenge is a little bit harsh. And actually, the wooden mass challenge as well is a little bit harsh for an all or nothing challenge to be that.
At least with the mass challenge, though, they were being really lenient with those scores.
Oh god, yeah. I mean, some of those were not that good. They were more impressive than I thought they'd be after 2 hours, but some of those were a little bit lenient.
Yeah, Rose was not a 10.
No, I think this challenge was judged a bit too harshly.
For the dance one, as soon as Rick said, yeah, it's €2,000 and it's all or nothing, even before the first dance, it was impossible. There are 10 movements.
Yeah. And you'd hope the dancers knew what the rules were going into it as well. I think they probably did if they were told they needed to alternate and all that sort of stuff. But I just think maybe this challenge is a little bit too harsh. It's great, and it's one of those wonderfully cultural challenges you couldn't do anywhere else in the world. Sing its praises to high heaven. But I think actually the challenge itself was a little bit too mean.
And watch the reunion show. Oh, I sabotaged performing one of the dance movements and cost the group €2,000. No, you had no chance of the €2,000 to begin with. That's not a sabotage.
Yeah. The other thing about whether there was a sabotage on this side of the challenge as well is that Rick did tell them which ones were wrong at the end.
Yeah.
Which draws more attention to where the mole may have sabotaged if they did. I think it ended up being 1 each for Bridget and Micah, off the top of my head. And obviously, we know that Bridget wasn't the mole, thanks to Saunders picking her.
Yep. I'll be here again next week.
The other thing I do want to draw attention to as well is all the move names were given in English, which I thought was interesting.
They were going to give the word names in Dutch, but the local dancers thought they would be too tall and heavy to perform.
I would have thought, at least in terms of the captions, they would have given them in Dutch, if not Khmer and Dutch. So I'm wondering whether that's going to be a clue of some description, the fact that they were all in English.
Yeah, especially the leaf one. The one dance move is leaf, which refers to Leaf from Survivor One World, who happens to be friends with one of the contestants on this season.
Leaf, we're going to Leaf now.
Now, it's a reference to Leaf from Survivor One World, who famously sat in a box. And the mole is going to sit in a box in the next episode. That's what it's a reference to.
And how it was like a resort.
So the judge rules that 8 of the 10 were correct, but not all 10. If they can name the 2 that were wrong, they will still salvage €500 for the pot. And they pick ripe fruit and beauty, but it's actually ripe fruit and flower bud, meaning that they earn €750 of 4,000 for this challenge. I was saying this to Bindles before we started recording. I don't think we're going to have actually much to discuss actually in the challenges themselves. It's everything surrounding the challenges that's interesting in this episode.
Yeah.
For the 2 hours of the mask making, there was just it was fun to. It was definitely fun to watch. It was one of those rare challenges where it's fun to watch, but very few observations to really make.
Yeah. Outside of Sophie looking distinctly unattractive thanks to the camera angle.
And having the most ridiculous reaction to chiseling off a right nostril.
Yeah. Like, it's a fine challenge, it's just a little bit slow. And because this is an episode with only 2 challenges, it's really, really noticeable. Where, like, if there was another challenge after this, and it was, 3 challenges this episode, I don't think it would have been as obvious.
I will also say, I think if I was going to be on the mole, this episode would be an absolute nightmare scenario for me.
Yeah.
Because I have zero artistic talent. I mean, you've seen some of the banner pics. I have no artistic talent whatsoever. I would have an absolute hell of a time doing this mass chiseling.
Yeah.
I would actually probably beat Sam in terms of low score.
I, on the other hand, am good at giving head.
I mean, that was the reference I was doing at the start of the episode, but yeah. Go for the low-hanging fruit.
I often do.
You are welcome.
There were 2 major, or both major scenes that they had between tasks and execution. Both involved Sam this week, and I was just thinking just how much airtime Sam has had through all 5 episodes. I mean, definitely one of the best Vidum characters we've had, but this season has completely revolved around him in the edit since the very beginning.
Yeah, I'll ask this question now. We're down to 6 people. Who do you think the final 3 are going to be?
Sam, Sophie, and Micah.
I was going to say the same. That's not good, Bindles.
It's not good for podcast predictions entertainment, but I think it probably will be those 3 as well. But I certainly think that the 2 people who are going to go head-to-head with the mole in the end is probably going to be Sam and Sophie. And this is why I asked this question now, is because I think certainly the narrative of the first half of this season has been setting up Sam versus Sophie. This scene in the pool is essentially Sam saying, well, I was only bonded to Sophie through Ray. I don't know if I can trust her. I kind of suspect her at the moment. It's setting up that head-to-head, I think, between Sam and Sophie at the end of the season. Which means whoever's with them is probably going to be the mole.
Yeah, I think at this point I'm sort of more wondering whether Stein or Rose will be Final Four.
Yeah.
Because I think Nora's out next week.
Yeah, I think that's certainly how it's leading.
Yeah.
But we've said that like 3 of these weeks already, so... And as you well know, my actual prediction of who's going to go home next week at the end of this episode is whoever Saunders puts as number 1.
Oh, of course.
Which is genuinely in my notes, by the way, Saunders.
Well, I have Sophie as number 1. So...
Yeah, I do.
But I would be very surprised if she goes, because these alliance scenes, especially the fact that it's Sam and Sophie, that they've invested so much time in this Sam and Sophie bond all season that it's very. It would seem a bit absurd for that to just be thrown away next episode. And then if you include the fact that one scene was Sam and Sophie and the other scene was Sam and Micah for like the 2 major intermission scenes.
Yeah, I think the narrative of this season is definitely, for me, leading towards Sam versus Sophie at the end, with probably Micah as the mole being the one that they have to fight to expose. But yeah, I mean, even on paper, Sam would be the person that you focus on, I think. He's very entertaining anyway. He's an absolute shit when he wants to be. He's super competitive. But most importantly, he's a Vidum Nepo baby. That is a brilliant story you can do. Even if he went home first, that is a brilliant storyline you can start with. Because it's all about, actually, is being the son of a Vidum host helpful to your cause or not? But the longer that Sam lasts, the more PTN content we get in the reunion. So I am inexplicably crossing my fingers for someone from Michelle's team to do well here, because I want Peter Yan content at the end of the season. I want him and Rick to have a really awkward conversation about how amazing Sam is. This is just what I want. And I'll say this now, and I'll spoil this for Fuzzy. If Peter Yan has a significant amount of time at the reunion, there's a strong likelihood he's going to be the banner for the reunion, just to make it easy for you. It might get to that point where Fuzzy hasn't guessed a banner all season and kind of gets one by default just by picking whatever Peter Yan dip moment screen grab I can get, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, as we said, there is a scene of Sam deciding whether he can trust Sophie anymore because Bray's not here to be the glue between them, and he hopes to increase his chances of going to the finale by making others suspect him, like he's on Netmole. And it is day 10 in Siem Reap, and particularly Artisan Angkor, a woodworking shop. A real-life wooden boy brought to life, also known as Rick, tells them that Cambodia has a rich history of traditional arts, including woodworking, and they're being challenged to make their own Buddha heads and have 2 hours, and if they get judged with an average of at least 7.5 out of 10, they'll earn €1,500 for the pot. And Sam immediately doubts that that's possible. And annoyingly, the lower third actually spoils that there is another €1,000 to be earned in this challenge.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the opinion that they shouldn't spoil those things.
Yeah.
Because I was waiting to work out where the hidden €1,000 was going to be.
Yeah. Like, I get that they've probably added it to justify putting the challenge titles on the screen, but I don't know whether it's worth it at this point.
No. Because last week it exposed them being really cheap, and this week it just exposed there being another twist to this challenge.
Yeah.
And by the end of the 2 hours, none of them actually look terrible. Even Sam's, which gets 5 out of 10, doesn't look as bad as I expected given the build-up that we had of it.
Yeah, they could have looked a lot worse, especially with Sophie chipping off the right nostril, and nobody gave the Buddha head like a Michael Jackson nose or anything like that. So crisis averted overall.
Yeah. And whilst they wait for the judging, they're put in another room listening to lift music. It's then interrupted by Rick giving them all a briefing. Each of them will receive an envelope with their grade in it, and the top 2 will also have money. The top person gets €700, and the second person gets 300. The mole is then told who received the 2 names, but everyone else gets a bleep, like it's Michelle talking about her children.
So the mole right now is going to hear who the 2 highest scores are, and all of the other listeners will hear elevator music right now.
Something about boobs? I know that, like they did To Tell the Truth earlier in the season, but it was nice of them to give us like a Great British Bake Off to sort of line up with all the masks at the end of the challenge.
Yeah.
With it all labeled as to who did what.
Yeah.
And the average was 7.35, so they don't earn their €1,500. They settle on Sophie straight away as the best sculpture, but she's suspicious that there was absolutely no dissent in the group. And by a vote of 4-3, they pick Micah as their second person. Sophie's envelope contains €0 as she only had a score of 7, while Micah gets 8.5, so they earn €300 of 2,500 for the challenge, 1,050 of 6,500 for the episode, and €6,255 of 28,100 for the season so far. And I think that is now higher than the maximum of Dominican Republic.
How would you have played this challenge as a mole?
I think it's very interesting because both of the challenges this episode, the mole really can't, in theory, do too much damage. Because yes, if they were on the temple side, they can sabotage, but also it's fairly public, all the sabotaging. Same with the Apsara dances. They reveal what dances went wrong, so it's tough to actually get away with the sabotage. I think the mole probably didn't do too much overt stuff in this episode. But with this, because we find out all their scores, maybe you shoot for the stars like Rose did, but then that runs the risk of €1,500 going into the pot accidentally. I think it's a bit mean if the mole only got away with it because the judging was influenced. I think you kind of got to play it as straight as you can as the mole. I think by 10 days into being around people, you probably have a fair assessment of how they would do with an artistic challenge like this. Certain people, especially in a celebrity season, will come in with a reputation of some description. I don't think someone like Micah could really get away with half-arsing it.
Yeah. Like, my feeling is you sort of aim to be like maybe the third or fourth best out of the 7.
Yeah.
and you sort of don't worry about the score because you don't know how lenient they're going to be anyway. So you sort of aim for, third or fourth best. So then when you get to the bit where you're trying to, pick who's got the money, you've got an extra mask there that you can use to, argue against the obvious two.
Yeah.
Which I think is basically what Micah did. I think that's probably the best way for a mole to handle it.
Yeah, I think the mole probably had a bit of a quieter episode, this one, because it's much tougher to do overt sabotaging and get away with it.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, if they scored 7.5 or higher on the mask challenge, I wish that that line of the Buddha heads would have been broken by a Goomba flying out of it, like in the Crazy Cutters minigame from Mario Party, where whoever has the highest percentage, the Goomba just breaks out of the outline. So I wish the same concept would have happened here.
Are you calling Buddha a Goomba?
You are very brave taking on Buddhists.
I did not call Buddha a Goomba.
After your deeply offensive Barack Obama impression before we started recording, and now this.
Hey, it's there's a lot of self-improvement given the whole Pol Pot commentary last week.
Is there any wonder that America's putting tariffs on Canada when you just have such offensive rhetorics on us?
Oh yeah.
And a happy Goomba Day to Daniel Peake, by the way.
If we know one thing, Trump really likes to defend Buddhists.
Yeah, and Obama. So Nora got a score of 5.5, Sam got 5, Bridget got 8, Stein got 7.5, which means Rose was the one with the €700 and a perfect 10, although she wears a 12. Before the test, Sam decides to give Micah her yoke back in exchange for the answers to two things: who she put most of the characteristics on in the first challenge, and who she said was the mole in that test. And she says tune for both, and he tells her a little bit of information that they're going to the airport in episode 7, and asks for her help to find the suitcase, and she agrees.
At least it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'll give you back your yoker. What do you want in exchange? A hug.
€700.
€700.
I do think it's interesting that we've got halfway through this season without a single exemption. I know they're not necessarily throwing advantages at them in the same way that they used to on Vidum.
Yeah.
The new showrunner seems to be a lot more conservative about advantages. But we haven't seen even a whiff of any green, black, white, yellow exemptions.
Yeah, it's been kind of refreshing just watching this be basically a standard season instead of being, idle hunting for 9 weeks.
Yeah, because it's only been, 7 or 8 Yokas in total, I think, in the season so far, which is very low on the Vidimens.
Well, there was the 5 in the restaurant, which half of them didn't end up getting 1. Stein got 2, was it?
Stein got 2.
2? Was there another one after that?
Sophie. So that's 8.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, my guess of 7 or 8 was pretty good, actually. I could remember the 5 in the restaurant, but I thought there was maybe 2 or 3 more. But it's quite low on the Vidimens that usually they're spaffing entire claw machines worth of Yokas at them at this point. Because, lest we forget, Oregon had the claw machine in episode 2.
If this was a Survivor US production crew, when Sophie accidentally breaks off the right nostril, there would have been an exemption inside. And then the 2 people who scored lowest on the Final 4 quiz have to face off against each other in a fire baking challenge to see who goes on to the final episode.
To be fair, if this was like Survivor US, when Nora quit the Apsara challenge, they probably would have just quoted Ulrika Johnson being like, if you have put yourself in the light entertainment /showbiz arena, you will be expected to dance.
I know you joke about these things, Thorners, but the German Mole reboot in 2020 genuinely did have a double red screen head-to-head elimination challenge at Final 5.
What was the challenge?
It was a general knowledge quiz. Sudden death between the 2 people who got a red screen. Oh, and one of them was the mole.
You gotta be kidding me.
No. You know how I bitch about Germany 5? These are the reasons why.
What a stupid idea.
It was horseshit.
So which one of the temples in this episode is Redemple Temple?
That's Bion, I think.
Okay.
Count the number of faces and divide it by 4 and you survive the execution.
You have 4 minutes.
Yeah. Bring out Madonna and Justin Timberlake.
So it's now time for the test. 20 questions about the identity and actions of the mole. Whoever knows least goes home, except for the mole who can never go home. Micah finally has her own yoga back, and the test and execution take place at Hanuman Artifacts. Stein says he tries not to rush his suspicions, but Nora is so quiet that it could be strategy to be a quieter mole who sees everything. Nora says that Rose could be the mole as she's moled from day one in almost every single challenge. She'd do exactly what Rose did, work hard, but try and deflect being chosen. Rose says that her head is going crazy, she watches everyone all day. Sophie's very eager, and that can't be healthy. Sam is relaxed, Bridget's very smart, and Micah plays a good game. Micah also plays her yoga. She doesn't want to take any chances. She found it suspicious that they all had to stand in a yoga pose for 3 minutes, and Yogi Sophie was the first to fall and cost them €500. Sophie says Micah isn't very noticeable, but moles can be inconspicuous. She made a mistake in the dance challenge and didn't use her middle finger. It's exactly what a mole would do. Bridget has tunnel vision and was warned to spread till the end. Nothing is what it seems, and no one can be trusted. And Sam got the feeling that Sophie wasn't moling very obviously, apart from to lower the stakes in the temples immediately. Rick says that just because they've had green screens so far doesn't mean that they're right. It could just be that their suspicions were wrong, but they were lucky, and one person's green will become red right now. Micah, Rose, and Nora all get green screens before the Saunders curse continues, and Bridget gets the red.
Not Bridget! Why Bridget? Why does she have to go? Fuck.
Can you please suspect Nora as number one next week, Saunders?
No.
Please. We just need to get rid of the final bit of chaff, and then this season's great.
Is anyone else creeped out a little bit by Rose's bug eyes at the execution?
Yes. And they focused on them for so long.
Yeah.
It was super distracted.
Yeah, like I know she's got large eyes anyway, but it was like really, really distracting there.
I hear the motorcyclists were talking about it. They are tall and heavy and have large eyes. They're just texting each other.
So Bridget tells the group and then Rick that she didn't spread enough, and she got to question 15 and realised that she didn't spread enough. It didn't feel good. She'll take the memory of the entire trip with her, and in her last act, she wills the pot to Micah.
Well, that was dumb.
Yes, it was. And she nearly forgets to give all the money over as well, which is hilarious.
I can't believe she was a little bit surprised to go home when her exit interview was her saying she didn't spread enough at final 6, 7, whatever we're up to.
And she said this in the confessional during the test as well. She's like, oh yeah, I was warned to make sure I keep spreading. And I didn't do it, but I was warned to.
Right after Gabriel, too.
Yep.
It's interesting that the clips we see from her in like her little exit montage are basically from the first couple of episodes of the season, and then there's nothing from the last month or so. Because like we get, the dancing bit in episode 1 that she completely effed up, and then her stealing the thing in the market in episode 2, and then there's been nothing for the last 3 episodes.
Also on the thing about the market, all of the people who were involved in that basically have gone home now, because Ray and Gabriel were guiding her, and Bridget has now gone home as well. So it seemingly looks like it was a complete fuck-up rather than a deliberate mole sabotage at this point, I would say.
Which task was this?
This is the heist in the market that you missed.
Oh, right, the sober heist?
Yeah, Bindles and I discussed during episode 2 that maybe the mole did a live sabotage and actually marked some of the items in the market themselves.
Oh yeah, but now everyone's gone from that?
Well, now the people involved who could have guided her to it have gone. I think it maybe lays a bit more credence towards that theory than it was a deliberate sabotage on the mole's part. Because the reason that Bridget got a fair bit of suspicion that week was because she was the only person to cost them money in that challenge. So next time, they're back at Angkor and identifying photographers. There is no A to discipline, say the line Bart. They can cheat on the test, and someone gets a true happy ending on a massage table.
Are we going to eulogize Bridget?
Yeah. Bridget was solidly fun. She was enthusiastic. Yeah. She's everything we like in an older female contestant who isn't Rianne sitting down and enjoying herself or being sniper bitch. Yeah, I liked Bridget.
Yeah, I like Bridget. I feel like she was sort of the latest in a long line of people who are sort of like too big for this show, and sort of every so often when they do that, it's those are the sort of people who sort of sit back and don't really do a hell of a lot because they're worried about their reputation and all that sort of stuff. But I think sort of a bit like Nikki, she sort of really devoted herself to the experience a little bit more than, say, what's her name in Colombia who went out first, or
Evie?
Yeah, I was supposed to say Ava?
Evie.
yeah,
Ava, Evie?
like I feel like sort of every so often they cast someone who's sort of like a decently big name, and then they don't really do a hell of a lot. And I don't think that Bridget was one of those people. I think she like genuinely tried.
Yeah, I think certainly from the pre-union, she came across as a fan of the show, and she just did it because she enjoys watching the show with her kids, and she did it for her kids. The other thing I will say is that looking at Bridget's background, I don't think she has any qualms about doing certain things just because they're not fun. Like, I don't know how much you've looked into her background, Saunders, but she has done some very fun shows. She has posed for Playboy. I think she donated the fee for Playboy to an animal charity off the top of my head. She's lived a life. She's a very, very interesting lady.
Interesting. Yeah, I really liked her on this season too. She will be missed.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we got her doing karaoke, and I'm really glad we got her doing Apsara this week.
Oh god, that one shot of her, like when they bring up the caption for smiling, and she looks like somebody is torturing her. Just perfect.
Yeah. As I said to you before the episode, that would have been a contender if they didn't put the caption on the screen, I think.
Yeah.
For the banner. So, with Bridget leaving in the pool, that means Michelle loses her third team member in 4 weeks, leaving all her hopes of a win resting solely on the shoulders of Sam Hargens. Logan still has Nora and Stein, and I've got Micah, Sophie, and Rose. And as has already been pointed out this episode, if my team remains intact next week, I am guaranteed the first finalist.
Pick it up, Michelle. Do you know how hard it is to be the only Australian who knows what's going on in this shit?
I don't think Michelle's caught up with the season yet, mainly because I would have had a lot of abuse off Michelle if she'd caught up with the season at this point. She's having a bad time, bless her. On First Suspicions, it's a good week if you are David V, Femke, and James, with Bridget as their 10th suspect. And also, I give him a little bit of rare praise. Logan Saunders put her in 9th, so he gets a shout out in this section as well.
Yeah!
But it's an even better one if your name is A Fuzzy Orange, who is currently taking the solo lead on First Suspicions with a score of 24 with a minimum of 21. Unfortunately for Mateus, he's the only person who had Bridget as his number one suspect. But it's overall bad news for our much beloved Michelle Piss-Denovan, who with a score of 39 is currently dragging her heels on First Suspicions. And that is, as I said at the start of this episode, only 6 points above the absolute maximum score you could be at this point on First Suspicions.
Has anybody ever achieved the maximum score in a season?
Maybe once, I think. It's certainly rare at Final Six to have a score that's above about 35, I'd say. You've got to be really unlucky to have a score that high. Given the overall maximum with 10 people is 55. Even going into week 2, if you lose someone in the first opportunity, the maximum you could have is 54. And Michelle's currently only 15 below that. The Dutch suspicions this week are Rose in number 1 on 26% plus 3 on last week, Sophie on 23 plus 3 from last week, Micah on 15 plus 4, Sam on 13 plus 3, Stein on 12 plus 1, and Nora on 11, the same as last week. Final 2 questions of the episode as always. Who do we suspect and who's going home next? Other than Sophie, because Logan suspects her as number 1.
So my suspect list is as follows. Sophie, number 1. So hopefully she doesn't. I gotta break up the streak. Then Micah, then Rose, then Stein, then Nora, then Sam.
I do have to interject here. Where was Bridget on your suspect list?
Number 2 prior to the execution.
I just wanted to make sure that was on the record.
And I think we've established by now Logan's suspicions are a load of number 2.
Yeah.
And I think Nora's going home.
Good. That's what we like to hear. On the subject of Sophie being your number 1 suspect and us all hoping she doesn't go home, Sophie is the only person you've suspected as the number 1 suspect so far this season who didn't go home the next week.
Imagine if she goes home next episode.
I said this to Bindles when you sent over your suspicions when we were waiting for you. Like, it's a win-win for me either way, because either Sophie stays and I'm guaranteed a finalist, or Sophie goes and you get another week of absolute rinsing for being a curse.
Oh, I hate being rinsed.
Especially when you're on all fours, going up a Cambodian temple.
Oh God.
Scrub that from your mind.
Grief. We're going to grief now.
That's the grief dance. It's definitely not the beauty dance. Maybe the flower bud.
Grief.
Yes, this next hand action is the tsunami. Be thankful that I said tsunami rather than douche.
Yeah, only Tigo does that one in Cambodia.
Anyway, Bindles, suspicions.
Well, as soon as I can get a word in edgeways. So, Micah, Sam, Stein, Rose, Sophie, Nora. Nora's going home.
Interesting. Also, you missed the opportunity to go do douche. My suspect list this week is Micah, Rose, Stein, Sophie, Sam, Nora in that order, and officially my prediction on who's going home is Nora, Obs, or whoever Saunders puts as number one. Anything else you want to say?
Happy Groundhog Day to Daniel Peake.
Oh yeah, that's right. I can't believe I forgot.
We're recording this on the 3rd of February. How could we forget to wish Daniel Peake a happy Groundhog Day, Daniel Peake?
Yeah, happy Groundhog Day, Daniel Peake. May all of your dreams come true.
It's such a good job that Dan doesn't listen to this podcast. So, after we wish Dan a happy Groundhog Day a few more times, thank you for listening to our Beast and World 2025 recap. We'll be back next week to continue the hunt for the new small in Cambodia. Don't forget you can contact us on pretty much every social media site where we are RTV Warriors, as long as it's not TikTok. Or you can email us at contact@rtvwarriors.com. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/rtvwarriors. And as a special treat, if you go on the highest tier this week, Logan will send you his used Cambodian douche. Thank you as always to Marika for the subtitles. We'll see you next week.
Peace out and just chill till the next episode.
No, chilling makes it worse.
I can't believe we managed to do an entire episode about fingering Head and Hog and didn't mention Matt Bar once.
I'm proud of us.